we are going to wrap up with our introduction of the different types of tissues in our body. So just to look back again, we have epithelial tissue and connective tissue that we've already talked about. Today we're going to talk about nervous and muscle tissue. We're actually going to start with muscle tissue first. There are three kinds of skeletal muscle. Three types of muscle. We have skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, and smooth muscle. So we'll talk about each of those separately. But all of them are going to be specialized to allow them to contract or shorten so that they can produce movement of some kind. First, we'll look at skeletal muscle tissue. This is packaged by sheets of connective tissue into organs that would be considered your skeletal muscles. So normally, you don't really think of a muscle as being an organ, but it actually is. So each separate skeletal muscle is an organ. These are attached to the skeleton and they form the muscular system. The other kinds of muscle tissue, they can fall into that category, but usually when we talk about the muscular system, we're really just focusing on your skeletal muscles. And the smooth muscle kind of goes in with other systems based on the organs it's part of. Cardiac muscle goes with your cardiovascular system because it's part of your heart, even though they're all kinds of muscle. So again, really when we think of your muscular system, we're talking strictly about skeletal muscle. These are under voluntary control, meaning that you consciously decide to move them. When your skeletal muscles contract, they actually pull on the bones or on skin to either give you your movements in your body or change your facial expressions. And the cells that make up this kind of tissue are very long and they're cylinder shaped. Because they're so long and large cells, they have several nuclei to allow there to be control throughout the entire cell. So that means the cell doesn't have to wait for one message to get from one end all the way to the other end of the cell. And skeletal muscles have what we call striations. So you can see them in this picture. They look like stripes. Okay. And we also call your skeletal muscle tissue or the cells that make that up muscle fibers. Next, we have cardiac muscle. We only have this in your heart. So it's the only place in your body you would find cardiac muscle tissue. When these cells contract, that allows the heart to act like a pump and then push blood out of the heart into your blood vessels. This is under involuntary control, meaning your nervous system causes your heart rate to be a certain heart rate or whatever your normal should be, or slow it down or speed it up depending on activity. These cells in this tissue are also striated like skeletal muscle. They only have one nucleus per cell. They're pretty short cells and they kind of branch. And where they connect together, it's the place that they connect or where they form a junction at the attachment point. Those are called intercalated discs. And that just allows electrical signals to pass through the cells quickly to keep your heart rate steady. Next, we have smooth muscle tissue, and that'll be it then for muscle tissue. Another term for this would be visceral muscle. We have smooth muscle in the walls of our hollow organs, such as our stomach, uterus, blood vessels, your intestines, your esophagus. Pretty much any hollow organ would have, like, smooth muscle makes up the walls of those organs. Because there's smooth muscle in the walls of those organs, it allows them to contract. It is going to happen more slowly than the other types of muscle, but it happens in wave-like motions, and we call those motions peristalsis. So as smooth muscle contracts, again, more slowly than cardiac or skeletal, it allows the contents of your hollow organs to be pushed through. So if we're talking about your blood vessels, like for example, your arteries, they have, compared to veins, a thick layer of smooth muscle in them that helps them to, one, withstand the pressure from your heart pumping blood right into your arteries, but it also helps to continually assists the heart in pushing the blood through them to circulate that throughout your body. These are also under involuntary control, so that's a similarity between cardiac muscle and smooth muscles, that they're under involuntary control. These cells also have spindle shapes, so they're kind of narrow at each end and wider in the middle, so you can kind of see that here. They are non-striated, so they don't have those stripes like skeletal and cardiac muscle. And then like smooth muscle, they only have one nucleus per cell. Okay. And then finally we have nervous tissue. Really, nervous tissue is just your neurons. And there's two major functions to your neurons: irritability and conductivity. So these properties let your nervous tissue or your neurons both receive and send signals from one part of the body to the other. There are cells that help support, insulate, and protect the neurons, and those are called neuroglia cells. So here you can see what a neuron would look like. We'll focus on that specifically. The nervous system will be the first system that we cover, so we'll worry more about that then. But just to wrap up and look at all of the tissues, just to kind of so you can see where we would find each of them, we have this diagram to look at quickly. So nervous tissue would be in your brain, your spinal cord, and your nerves. Muscle tissue, you have skeletal, cardiac, and smooth. Again, skeletal is attached to your bones, cardiac is in your heart only, and smooth muscle is in the walls of your hollow organs. Epithelial tissue, we find that in your skin, the lining of your GI tract, your respiratory tract. And then connective tissue helps to support and protect, like your bones and tendons. Adipose tissue or fat tissue is also a type of connective tissue, as well as your blood. So if we take a look there, again, you can kind of just see where we would see those different tissues. As I mentioned in a previous lesson, we will be looking at microscope slides of these different tissues, but that just kind of wraps up our 4 types of tissue we have in our body that makes up all of our organs.